Well, you need a combination of things, but what is beyond doubt is that you need obviously the military capability to drive them out of the ground that they're holding, because this whole idea of what they call a caliphate or an Islamic State is itself a recruiting tool for them. So you need to drive them out of their positions, and I think eventually we will achieve that aim. But I think then there is a deeper and broader question, which is really what I've focused a lot of my work on with my foundation today, which is around the ideology of extremism, where I'm afraid that's got a much wider purchase. And even if you get rid of ISIS, you've got 15, 20 other groups waiting to take their place. And this is coming out of a warped view of religion, which we need to tackle at its root, which are in the education systems in many countries, who are educating young people to a closed-minded view of the world. And this is what we have to deal with.
And that could take generations to change.
Well, it could take a generation. I think the right way to look at this struggle is that it is a generational struggle, because we have the problem, every day what my foundation does also is it tracks this across the world. So you can go there and you see literally listed every major extremist or terrorist incident. And it's in the Middle East, but it's also in Africa. It's in the Far East, it's in Central Asia, and of course we know it's in Europe. So this is a global threat. It will take a generation to defeat it, but the sooner we put the right measures in place, the sooner we will get on with doing so.
What kind of role can our allies in the Middle East play? Saudi Arabia, for instance, is in the middle of attempting to transform its economy into something beyond just oil with the Saudi Vision 2030. What kind of role does Saudi Arabia play in that?
The role of Saudi Arabia is absolutely essential. I mean, they're an ally of ours in this struggle. I think what is coming out of Saudi Arabia at the moment is really exciting and really important, a development for the country, for the region, for the wider world. And the good news, and sometimes when you're talking about this, people say, okay, it's so depressing, tell me some good news. Well, the good news is this, that there is a real possibility of alliance within Islam and within the Islamic world to fight against this religious extremism and intolerance, and to fight for the idea of societies that are tolerant across the boundaries of faith and culture. And those allies are also there in the Middle East. So yes, a lot of the problems come out of the Middle East, but a lot of the solution lies there also.
Do we have the right leaders in the U.S. to strike those alliances, to continue that dialogue?
Well, I think we do and we can, but in the end, it's not just about the person that you have as the leader, it's what they're going to do. And the role of America in this, of course, is vital, because America is the most powerful country in the world, and we need an America that's strong and engaged, and engaged particularly on this issue.
So let's talk about Brexit for a moment, because in the upcoming Brexit vote, you have a rise of populism in Europe and, of course, the United States, distracting governments from confronting some bigger issues, including ISIS, if we meld the two together. To what extent is that emotion overtaking the rational arguments for staying put?
Well, when you look at the polls, they're pretty evenly matched, Remain or Leave. But my best instinct about this is that the country will do the sensible thing and stay in the European Union, because if we were to leave, it would put a level of economic risk and insecurity into the ordinary family household that I think most people would think is a foolish risk to take. So I believe we will stay, but I have to say, I look at politics around the world today, and it's in an unpredictable state.
When the President of the United States, President Obama, spoke in the UK recently, it seemed like he swayed things towards the stay camp, perhaps just a little bit, moving the needle a little bit. Why do you think that is? Why did his words have such impact?
Because, if you're rational, the view of the President of the most powerful country in the world and our biggest ally should matter. So when someone like President Obama comes and personally, I think it's important we know his view and the strength of his view, and says, look, we as your ally want you to stay because we want a Britain that's engaged with the world, then I think it does count. And remember, the European Union is the market, the largest commercial market in the world. It's the biggest political union. We sell half of our goods into the European market. If we get out of Europe, the really crazy thing about the situation is we will then have to negotiate step by step our way back into the single market. So, when you stack up the arguments, as you say, I mean, the rational side of the argument's very clear, and you've got to hope ultimately that whatever the emotions are, that people take a rational view of the interests of themselves, their families, and also the country.
So much of the debate on Brexit hinges on immigration. Looking back at your time as Prime Minister, were you wrong to open the doors to Eastern Europe without transitional controls? If you could do it all over again, what would you do differently?
There's a big debate about this. I mean, personally, I do not feel that the immigration from Eastern Europe was a problem for Britain. I think those people contribute far more in taxes than they ever take in benefits. They're hard-working people. They're good members of our community. And after all, the benefit of having Eastern Europe in the European Union is enormous. Think where we would be today if those Eastern European countries weren't part of the European Union. So, in the end, incidentally, if we voted to leave and then wanted to go back into the single market, free movement of people would be one of the things we'd have to have. So look, you can go back and debate what we did 10 years ago, because we could have had people come in at a slower rate, that's true at that point. But all in all, I think Europe has been good for Britain, Britain has been good for Europe, and a larger Europe with Eastern Europe in the European Union is profoundly important for our security and our prosperity.
I need to ask you about the Labour Party. Do you think the Labour Party has an anti-Semitism problem?
Well, I think it's important that in the light of recent events, the leadership has set up an inquiry into it. Let's let that take its course. But I mean, I know I speak for the overwhelming majority of Labour Party members when I say there is absolutely no place for anti-Semitism in our party. On the contrary, we have always been strong and powerful campaigners against that type of prejudice and that sort of poison. So, it's been a difficult time, let's say, but we'll have this inquiry take its course, and I'm sure it will come out with some very strong conclusions on this.
And finally, just on a lighter note, did you make any wagers on Leicester City Foxes?
I think everyone's thinking, why couldn't I see that coming? 5,000 to 1. It's a wonderful and exhilarating thing. I mean, it's a sort of captivating moment for the country, actually, because it's just
the underdog winning. Who doesn't love that?
No, exactly. Who doesn't love that? And what it shows you is, by the way, that the Premier League in English football is the most remarkable league in the world. So.